Guys, please confirm to me. All of you are getting my voice and screen. Those who are attending in online. Is my voice and screen is clear to all of you guys? Please confirm to me. So, all right. All right. Guys, please confirm to me. All of you are getting my voice and screen. Those who are attending in online. Guys, please confirm to me. All of you are getting my voice and screen. Those who are attending in online. All right. And now, understand the content here. So, what we completed there in the last session. I think so. In the servlets, we are discussing about some topics like what there protocol client server architecture we are discussing. In a client server architecture, we completed client, then we started with what there protocol. In that protocol, we have given some details like what there definitions are given, some protocol. What is the meaning of protocol? The definition are given. Now observe carefully. What is the purpose of the protocol? What is this protocol actually? Protocol is a set of rules and regulations which are used to transfer data from one mission to another mission. Alright, number of protocols are available. In client server applications or in web applications, what is the requirement of the protocol? The main intention of the protocol is to carry the data from client, that means to carry request data from client to server and to carry response data from server to client. Okay, fine. In web applications, which protocol is required and why is it required? In web applications, we need a protocol. It must be a connectionless protocol, stateless protocol, and a compatible protocol for hypertext data. What is the meaning of connectionless protocol? It's a protocol. It should not have any physical connections. It must have what their logical connections. Stateless protocol is a protocol. It is able to remember only the present request data, not able to remember the previous request data. In general, in web applications, data will be transferred from client to server and from server to client in the form of hypertext data. To carry hypertext data between client and server, we need a compatible protocol. All right. Among all the protocols, only what protocol is suitable for this requirement? No, HTTP protocol is able to follow the above factors. So HTTP protocol is a suitable protocol for web applications. Depending on the requirement, you may use different protocols also. But in general, in a web environment, HTTP protocol is a suitable protocol. How is the HTTP protocol is able to? How is the HTTP protocol able to manage its stateless nature? That's the question here. Answer is very clear. Already we are aware about it. If you observe the diagram, when we submit a request from client to the server, protocol will take the request. Protocol will establish a virtual socket connection between client and server on the basis of the server IP address and port number. Protocol will prepare a request format. In that request format, we have two parts, header part and body part. Header part is able to manage client's metadata, and body part is able to manage request parameters data. Here, client's metadata in the sense name of the client, local details about the client, which encoding mechanisms are supported by the client, which zipping formats are supported by the client. All these details are about like what the client details. Request parameters data is the data which is provided by the user in the forms. Like if it is a login page, no username and a password. Right? If it is a registration form, first name, last name, address, email ID, mobile number, all these details are nothing but what the request parameters. No. When request format is created, protocol will carry that request format to the server. Server is able to take that request format data, Server is able to identify the server side resource. Server side resource will be executed. By the execution of the server side resource, some response will be dispatched. Some response will be generated. When server is dispatching response to the client, protocol will take that response. Protocol is able to prepare a response format. In that response format, again, we are having two parts. What are the two parts inside the response format now? One is header part, another one is what their body part. Header part is able to manage response headers, response metadata, length of the response and type of the response, these details. And body part is able to manage the actual dynamic response. Protocol is able to carry response format to the respective client. Client is able to take response data from the response format. It is able to display the data to the user. When response is reached to the respective client machine, protocol will terminate the connection between client and server. When the connection is terminated, protocol is able to lose its present request data. So protocol is able to manage the present request data until the connection is existed. Once the connection is terminated, automatically protocol is able to lose the present request data. In this context, if we submit next request from the client to the server, in the next request processing, if we want to get first request data, then it is not possible. Protocol is unable to provide that data to the next request processing. So because of this reason, we can conclude that protocol, HTTP protocol is what their stateless protocol. That's the meaning of this is a way to manage stateless nature by the HTTP protocol. If you go for the applications like what online business or maybe online shopping, e-banking or maybe any application in outside, it's mandatory to remember client's previous request data at the time of processing later request. To manage this client's previous request data at the time of processing later request, we need to use a set of server-side mechanisms. That set of server-side mechanisms are called as what their session tracking mechanisms. Now this is the total scenario we understood clearly. Next one is, apart from this, given one more point. In web applications, there is another advantage with the HTTP protocol. What is that another advantage? No, it's able to provide environment to send different types of requests from client to the server due to its HTTP methods, due to its internal HTTP methods. All right, sir. What are the various HTTP methods which are provided by protocol? What are the various HTTP methods are existed here now? See this one. HTTP protocol has provided the following HTTP methods. What are the various HTTP methods are available? First one is as per HTTP 1.0 version, that HTTP methods are like what there, we can understand it now. First one is get, post, head. These are like what there as per HTTP 1.0 version. Next one is number 2. As per HTTP 1.1 version. As per HTTP 1.1 version, some other HTTP methods are available. First one is options. Next one is trace. Next one is a put. Next one is what there, delete. Okay. Next one is HTTP protocol has provided a reserved HTTP method, that is connect. Right, so like this, one or two reserved HTTP methods are available, not required. Just we can understand these are the various HTTP methods which are available in HTTP protocol. Later on, if you have any updated content there about this HTTP protocol, HTTP methods, in the future we are going to discuss about these concepts. These topics are very, very important in web applications and as well as in web services. In SOAP services and RESTful services, definitely these concepts are very, very important for us in the next onwards. But in advanced Java also little bit only we are going to use these HTTP methods. But when we go for Spring Boot microservices and remaining content here, they definitely these HTTP methods are playing very good role. Okay, right there we are going to understand in the future, not immediately, but at present we can understand these are the various HTTP methods which are available. From this total HTTP methods, we have some important interview questions here we are getting. Some important interview questions are available. The very first question, very first interview question is, what are the differences between get and post request? What are the differences between get and post request? Or simply speaking, get and post, that's it, or maybe request types. All right, sir. Now we have to understand the points clearly, observe carefully. What are the differences between get and post? This is one of the famous interview question, very important interview question. Everybody must understand this question clearly. Okay, all of you observe carefully, understand this, all of you understand this clearly. What are the differences between get and post request? Right, sir. The first point. Point number 1. Get request is a default request in web applications. Get request is a default request in web applications. Clear? Get request is what there? A default request in web applications. Whereas post request is not a default request in web applications. For example, without specifying any request type, if we submit request from client to the server, without providing any request type, if we submit a request from client to the server, automatically the provided request is nothing but what their get request. Understand my point? In some situations, I'm going to prepare some hyperlink. If I click on an hyperlink, automatically a request will go to the server side application. When request is going to the server side application, when we click on hyperlink, there automatically default request is submitted to the server side. Here the default request type is what their get request. There we are able to get only get request. There's a point here we have to understand. Okay, fine. This is point number 1. We can understand it clearly. Now coming to the second point. The second point is get request does not have body part in the request format. Get request doesn't have body part in the request format. Already request format contains 2 parts. What are the 2 parts in the request format? Header part and what next one here? Body part. All right, sir. It doesn't have what part? Header part. Answer my point. Okay, fine. Whereas post request has body part in the request format. Whereas post request has body part in the request format. Okay, what is the problem with the body part in the get request and in the post request? Now observe carefully. In the case of get request, in general, now tell me, request format has 2 parts. What are the 2 parts? Get request, sorry, header part, body part. Header part is able to manage client's metadata, but body part is able to manage what the request parameters data. Okay. In the case of get request, if body part is not available, and if we provide some request parameters data, how that request parameters data will be submitted to the server side application? Answer my point. In general, request parameters data will be transferred through the body part only. But in the case of get request, body part is not available. but still I'm sending some request parameters data, but how that request parameters data will be submitted to the server side application? If you come for this point, answer is very clear. Try to recognize this. In the case of get request, if we submit request parameters, if we send request parameters, or if we submit request parameters, in the case of get request, if we submit request parameters, then 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 the request format, then the request format will carry the request parameters through request through header part of the request format. Check the point here, what I am telling there. In the case of get request, if we submit request parameters, then the request format will carry the request parameters through the header part of the request format. But what is the problem actually? Where the header part in a request format, where the header part in request format, where the header part in request format has a memory limitations. Header part in request format has what there? Memory limitations. It is able to carry less data. It is able to carry what data? Less data. Hence, get request is able to carry less data from client to server. That's the conclusion actually. Please read out the statement what I have given there. There is a lot of information in that statement. In the case of get request, if you submit request parameters, then the request format will carry the request parameters through header part of the request format. Where the header part in a request format has memory limitations, it is able to carry less data. Hence, get request is able to carry less data from client to server. At least understand the context here. What is the point here I'm telling to you? All right, that's okay, fine. But what about the post request? In the case of post request, if you submit request parameters, then the request format is able to carry, then the request format is able to carry the request parameters through body part of the request format. Here, body part of the request format, here the body part of the request format does not have limitations in the memory. So post request is able to carry, or else maybe it is able to carry more data. Hence, post request is able to carry more data from client to server. Right. Now this is another point here we have to understand clearly. Hello, for getting that not. See, this point is mandatory point. For example, if any interviewer is asking question to you, tell me the differences between get and post. Of course, 100 differences are available. Not required to say all the 100 difference, no. The solid differences 4 or 5 are sufficient. The solid differences 4 or 5 are sufficient. They can understand how much knowledge you are having in. Among these solid differences, one of the differences this was. This is the one of the difference that we can understand clearly. Got it or not? Fine. Next point is also be one of the important difference. Now try to understand it clearly. Number 4. I want to show through a diagram. No, try to understand it. For example, this is a login page. Login form. And this is address bar. Here we are having username, password, login button is available. All right, now we are getting this login form. Now here already in the address bar we have some URL http:// localhost 1010 / app. Up to that it's available. Okay. Now here when we provide data, username is Durga and user password is something I provided. This is like what their user password. Here my question is, observe carefully. Here my question is, why the password data is provided in the stars? Because of what their security, because of protecting the data, not to visible the data to outside. Clear? Understand it clearly. This time we are submitting get request. We are submitting what request now? Get request. Fine. After providing this data, if we click on this button, login button, immediately what will happen there? When we click on login button, here immediately /login is an URL pattern. Immediately question mark uname is equal to Durga and upwd is equal to Durga. The data will be appended to the URL as a query string in the case of get request. Here you protected the data. Here you protected the data. But even though we protected this data, but when we click on button, automatically that protected data is visible in the address bar or not? Automatically the protected data is visible in the address bar or not as a query string. Then where is the security for the data? No. Where is the security for the data in this case? No. In the case of get request is going to be happen. In the get request, the request parameters data will be transferred along with the URL with the question mark and query string. The data is going to be provided in the case of get request. If it is a normal data, it's okay. But if the data is a protected data like password, PIN number, something else, if the data is attached to the URL in the address bar, anybody else can see. Everybody will see that password data there. But where is the security for the password data? Where we are able to manage security for our data? That's the question. Here we are getting some problem or not? The password problem, the security problems will come there. At the same time, if we take the similar example, this is login form. There we are going to see like what there. Address bar here we have taken. Now here we are going to provide like what their post request. Okay. Now again, if you have username, password, now here we are getting a button, login button. Now here URL is existed here, http :// localhost : 1010/app. Up to that it is available. As usual, here I provided data. Durga is a username. Password is something else here I provided. Now this is post request now. If we click on login button, what will happen here now? Only we are able to get login is a resource. Along with that login resource, data will not be appended to the URL. Am I right or not? Data will not come to the URL. Right, sir. Now this is like what there, what request no, post request here we are providing. If it is post request no, that user provided data will not be appended to the URL in the address bar. In the case of what request no, post request. But still user provided data will be transferred to the server through the request format body part. But still data will be submitted to the server. But the data is not visible at the address bar. Now tell me, which one is more secured one? Post request is what there more secured one when compared with what there get request. Get request is not providing security, whereas post request is providing what there security. There's a final conclusion here. What I'm telling to you clearly. All right, sir. Now let us check this point here. Now I want to copy this diagram here. Easily we can understand it clearly. All right, sir. So okay, fine. Right, sir. Next one is the difference is like what I'm telling to you. In the case of get request, if we provide request parameters data, then the request parameters data, then the request parameters data will be added to the URL in the address bar. Okay, then the request parameters data will be added to the URL in the address bar. Here, user provided data is visible in the client address bar. So, get request will provide or will not provide. Get request will not provide security for the data. Get request will not provide security for the data. All right, sir. Now understand it clearly. In the case of get request, if we provide request parameters data, then the request parameters data will be added to the URL in the address bar. Here, user provided data is visible in the client address bar. So, get request will not provide security for the data. Now, at the same time, what is the next point here I'm telling there? In the case of post request, if we provide request parameters data, then the request parameters data will not be added to the URL. The request parameters data will not be added to the URL in the client's address bar. Here request parameters data is not visible in the client's address bar. Client's address bar. So post request is able to provide security for the data. Client request, that means get request is able to provide lesser security or no security for the data, whereas post request is able to provide security for the data. Has sir got it or not? This is one point here we understood clearly. All of you understand it clearly, no? But one more point here I'm telling to you after this diagram here. In general, people are saying that get request is able to provide lesser security or no security for the data. Post request is able to provide good security, more security for the data. This is actually the point what in general people are saying that. Then what is that internal reason? No, this is that internal reason. In the case of get request, that request parameters data will be added to the URL in the address bar. So it's visible for everybody. So no security for the data. In the case of post request, user provided data will not be added to the URL in the address bar. So the post request is able to provide security for the data. This is in general, everybody, they're able to give the reason. Right or not? But there is one more reason internally. Maybe we are providing security up to browser only, at a browser level only. Am I right or not? At browser level, the data security here we are providing now. But the same data is transferring in the network. See, once we completed that browser and it's secured and everything, it's okay. If you click on this login button, okay, request is submitted to the server. Means that request data must be transferred through the network or not? The request data must be transferred through the network or not? When the data is transferring through the network, somebody else may enter into your network, somebody else may take your data. There is a chance for somebody else to capture your data through the network when the data is transferring in the network. Maybe some people may watch the data also if the data is available in the network. Is that got it or not? So there, the point is what I'm telling there. Listen carefully. In the case of get request, the request parameters data will be transferred through the network as a plain text data. In the case of get request parameters data will be transferred to the server through the network as a plain text data. If it is as plain text data, everybody can see the data. Everybody will see the data if it's a plain text data. So where security is not available. But in the case of post request, when we submit request parameters data from client to the server, that request data will be transferred through the network. But how the data is transferred through the network? No, the data will be transferred through the network as the encrypted data. The data will be transferred through the network as what? Their encrypted data. That means the moment when data is coming to the network, immediately data is going to be encrypted. Encrypted data will be transferred through the network. At the receiver side, no decryption is going to be happen. By decrypting the data will be taken into the respective server side application. So in the case of get request, the request parameters data will be transferred as a plain text data. But in the case of post request, the request parameters data will be transferred as what? Their encrypted data. Now this is the actual reason why we can conclude get request is able to provide no security, but whereas post request is able to provide more security. Yes, sir. All of you get my point or not? This diagram, this point is known by everybody, avoided by everybody. But whatever the point I'm telling there, encrypted data and not encrypted data, get request plain text data, post request encrypted data. This point is very might be less number of people are able to aware about it. But this is the reason why we can understand get request is providing no security, whereas post request is providing what their security for the data while transferring in the network. Network security, I'm telling you, network security is not good with get request, but network security is very good with what request? No, post request. That's also be the another point here we have to understand. Okay, now let's understand this clearly. Right, sir. In the case of get request, listen, all of you listen carefully. In the case of get request, If we submit request parameters data, then the request parameters data will be transferred through the network, as a plain text data, it will be understandable to all the members. It will be understandable to everybody. It will understandable to every user in the network. Understand my point here? If the data we provided in the form of get request. Okay. So get request is unable to provide security for the data. Again, this is another reason here I'm telling to you clearly. But in the case of post request, if we submit a request parameters data, then the request parameters data will be transferred through the network, as an encrypted data. The data will be encrypted data. So post request encrypted data, it is not understandable to all the users in the network. But if anybody else is going to do like what their decryption, if they're talented, they can do that kind of hacking also. Maybe they're able to capture the data, but they're able to apply decryption mechanisms. See, one question I'm asking there, now try to understand it. No, nowadays maybe even you can observe in the movies number of times, every hackers, they're trying to see hackers in the sense what I'm telling. There recently I watched one movie there. I think English movie watched there, related to like what there, somewhat action-oriented movie that was. I forgot that name actually. On the YouTube I watched it. So he's a spy. He's an agent from one country. I forgot the title also. Maybe a few days back. Okay, maybe. Then here what people are active now. Right. Good example. See, understand it now. So in that overall movie, what I recognized it that totally, what I identified, everybody they're trying to capture the data through the network only. They're getting some type of signals and they're decrypting the data and they're encoding the data or decoding the data and they're getting some kind of information. As per that, they're taking the actions. Understand it clearly. So entire movie is going on in this way only. But the person who is getting the data is taking the advanced actions when compared with opposite people. But at the end of the story, what the other party people, what they are doing there, intentionally they are given wrong data. These people are getting the data and correspondingly they have taken the steps now. Already they recognized this entire game there. They have taken more advanced steps when compared with them. They catch these people finally. Finally, then that story ends there. I think so. This story is not matched with you. I think so. Am I right? Yeah. This is. But I forgot the title. What was the title? I didn't remember it. Almost 1 week to might be 10 days back. I watched it clearly. See, by that we can understand hackers maximum in two ways they're able to do this kind of attacks. One is what their network attacks, another one is what their websites attacks. Max, they're trying to capture the data continuously through the network. Say for example, what Indians are doing now, leave it. What Chinese are doing now, 24/7, 365 days. They're in monitoring over the Indian websites and Indian total networks. Continuously they're watching. Of course, they're getting data. But what Indians are doing now? They're monitoring Pakistan websites and they're getting data from Pakistan. Understand it? What Pakistan people are doing? They're monitoring Afghanistan data. Right, sir. Anyway, the scenario, then everything is going on through the network. When the data is going on in the network, then people are trying to capture the data. They're able to get their information, required information. So network security is one of the most research area nowadays in outside. Network security. That is nothing but what there? Encryption and decryption. Encoding and decoding. This is a heart every time. Understand it clearly now. Even though thousands of algorithms are available for network security, but still people are required something more. Something more. Why? Because even they provided one type of secure algorithm. Within minutes of time, opposite people are trying to trace it. They're trying to identify it, what security they maintain. Understand it clearly. So this kind of things are going on. It's almost a Cold War. It's almost all equal to Cold War. Okay. Fine, sir. It's okay. All right, sir. Now, understand it clearly. Can you tell me, can you guess it now, who are the best hackers in the world? Don't say India, yaar. No. Apart from that, Indians, okay, then we feel proud for it. I can give one statement. They are good. Indians are very good. It's okay. Not North Korea. No, no, no. Russians. The best hackers in the world, Russians. Their efforts are too different, completely different. Understand it now? Okay, it's a different story. Now come into the thing. Unfortunate thing is what there, where government has encouraged that hackers, not ethical hackers. They don't have ethics. They don't have any other kind of things now. Government, that means that the Russian government encouraged the people to capture it. In some situations, it's going to be reversed. Maybe. Okay, sir. Leave it. It's not required now. So finally, here the context is what there. When the data is transferring in the network, if it is a get request, no. If it is a get request, no. What's going to be happen there, no? The data will be submitted as a plain text data. Because of that reason only, whenever we want to transfer some secure data, nobody will use get request. Nobody will use get request. Only get request will be used for what purpose there? Forms are available at server side. To get that forms only, we are going to use get request. Nobody will submit data through the get request to the server side. Sir, all of you get my point or not? See, for data transformation from client to the server, nobody will use get request. Everybody will go with what their post request. Data transformation is not available from client to the server. At server side, some resource is available. We want to get the data to the client. Data is available at server side. I want to get the data. So for that purpose only, we are going to use what request? No, get request. Observe carefully. So anyway, coming to the conclusion about this point, Ken. Network security is good in the case of post request. Network security is not good, not possible in the case of what there get request. That's the point, Ken. See, 2 points are given about the security. One is at browser level security, client level security. Another one is what their network security. In both the cases, which one is best? I'm telling there one more point. Most of the people are aware about this point only, but less number of people are aware about this point. But you have to say both the points. In the point of security, we have to talk 2 points. I get my point or not? Okay, right, sir. Next one is after this. One more point I'm telling there. Post request is providing some type of security, encrypted data, but still that encryption is not sufficient nowadays. Then people are trying to do explicit encrypted mechanisms, explicit network security. Some number of network security algorithms are available. They are trying to implement over the request. Sir, all of you are getting it or not? Security is very, very important. HTTP protocol is there initially. It is not providing much security. By default, it is having some security. but it is not sufficient nowadays. That's why HTTP has another layer, separate layer, HTTPS, secure socket layer. Other layer is available for the sake of providing more security over the HTTP protocol request. Okay, fine. Leave it. Now this is about security. We can understand it clearly. Next one is after completion of this point here, another point. Leave this point here. This is also important. The context when we are going to use, get the context when we are going to use post. In web applications, in web applications, get request will be used to get data from server mission. In general, get request will be used to get data from what mission? No, server mission. Can I say that is for download operation? Everybody understand it clearly? In web applications, get request will be used to get data from the server mission, to get data from the server mission. That is for what operation there? No, download. Getting data from server is nothing but what they download operation. See, just if you open browser, immediately downloading is starting. Say for example, if I open browser, there automatically what I'm getting there, the Google or something else, some data here we are getting or not. Understand my point clearly? What I'm telling them. Okay, fine. That is different one. When we open the browser, little bit data is going to be downloaded. Not only that, if we submit some request there, automatically data is going to be downloaded. So in the case of download operation only, we are going to use what request? No, get request. Get request is not for posting the data. Get request is not for what they're uploading the data. Get request is for the sake of what they're download the data. Understand my point or not? Okay, I'll come for this point once again. There is a point here I need to discuss with you. Next one is what there. Apart from this, in web applications, post request will be used to post the data. Post request will be used to post the data. Post the data to the server mission. That is for which operations are? Post the data in the sense like what there? Upload operation. That is for what operation there? Upload operation. Then by seeing these two differences now, you may get one question in our mind. Yes, what is that question here? Sir, in the previously, in the case of get request, if we submit request of parameters data, to the server, means that we are sending data from client to the server in the case of get request. Then immediately we are saying one more point is what they in web application get request will be used to get data. That means to get the data. So both are opposite points. At one point you said to me get request is able to send data from client to server. In another point what we are saying there, get request is mainly for what they're getting the data. So both are two opposite points now. How can we justify this point here? What is this get? Get is for getting data or setting the data, sending the data. This type of question here we are able to get now. Alright, anyway, answer I'm giving to you now, try to understand it clearly. I'm saying that clearly, get request is mainly for getting the data. Get request is mainly for getting the data. Post request is mainly for posting the data. Okay. Here what we have to understand the point now. For example, I'm in some online shopping application, for example. In the online shopping application, some books are identified. Java related books are identified. I want to download it. I purchased it in online. I can download it. I want to download that book, ebook. I want to download this. Is that all of you are following my point or not? Some books are available. I purchased it. I want to download that ebook from internet. How many books are available? 10 books are available. How many books are available? 10 books are available. Out of these 10 books, which book we want to download? Understand my point? Out of 10 books, no, which book we want to download? Say for example, book number 3, the third book I want to download. That means for each and every book, some identity is available or not. Which resource you want to download, that identity we have to send from client to the server or not. Come on, understand my point. Some 10 resources are available. Which resources we want to download, that resources identity we have to submit from client to the server or not. Still I'm using get request, still I want to do download operation, but to download a particular resource, that resources identity must be transferred, must be sent from client to the server or not. So it means that small amounts of data we have to send along with the get request from client to the server in order to download the resources. So small amounts of data we have to submit or not. Because of that reason, get request is able to carry lesser data from client to the server, but in the return it able to get more data. Return in the sense as a response. Understand my point? No limitations for response. In the case of get request, the limitation is on only request data. No limitation on what their response data. Understand my point? In the case of post request, no limitation on request data and as well as what their response data. Observe carefully. But mainly post is for what purpose? They know posting the data, uploading the data. Of course, after uploading the data, something you want to download, we can do it. It's okay, no problem. But in the case of get request, no, only getting the data, but transferring only less amount of data from client to the server. Clear or not? All of you get my point or not? Right, so now this is the point that I'm telling there. In web applications, get request will be used to get the data from the server machine, that is for download operation. In web application, post request will be used to post the data to the server machine, that is for what their upload operation. Okay, leave this one. This is another point. Fifth point. So all the users in the network, so post request, okay. Post request is able to provide security for the data. It's okay, fine. All right, sir. Now come for this point. Okay? Sixth point is completed, right? Now coming to the seventh point. Listen, all of you listen carefully. Everybody, understand this clearly. I have a question, guys. For example, when I open this, automatically, in some cases, automatically we are getting these many panels. In some situation, automatically we are able to get this. When I open the browser, automatically I'm able to get this. Do you think about it? This Google and everything is downloading from internet from the server directly. When I open the browser, how we are getting this one directly? Huh? I'm asking there every time. For example, 10 times I've opened this browser there, 10 times you are getting it. All 10 times, do you think about it? This entire Google and this text field and everything is coming from a Google server. Yeah, the point what I'm telling to you, cached data. What is the data? Cached data. One time only it will interact with the server. The data will come to the client browser. Same URL, if you submit multiple times, no, every time it will not connect with the server. Already first time result will be stored in the cache memory in the browser. From that it able to get the data. Are able to follow or not? So the point is what? This data is a first time we are getting the data. This data is coming from the server or not? We are not sending the data, it's coming from the server. Whatever the data which is coming from the server, that is maintained in the cache memory. Whenever we are using the same URL, and every time it able to get the data from what there? Cache memory. Am I right or not? So which request it is no? Getting data, always I'm telling there. Which request it is no? Get request. So get request data is a cached data. So in simply what I'm telling there, get request is cached request. Get request is what there? Cached request. But whereas post request is not cached request. When we open the browser, directly every time data will not be submitted to the server. I get my point on it. Every time data is coming from the server when we open the browser. So where some cache is maintained or not. So the point is like what I'm telling to you, directly the point here, get request is a cached, get request is cached. Understand my point or not? Get request is cached. Okay, where if we submit, where if we submit the same get request, same request every time, when we submit the same request every time, then the response will come from the browser cache. Every time the response will come for what there? Browser cache. It will not connect to the server every time. It will not connect to the server every time. Observe carefully. But the point is what there? Post requests are not cached. Post requests are not cached. That is where every time post request must connect with the server. Must connect with the server. As all of you are following this point or not? Again, I'm telling you, observe carefully. What is the point I'm telling you now? Get requests are cached requests, whereas post requests are not cached requests. Meaning is what there? The meaning is like what there? Frequently, we are using some URL for getting the data from server. First time it will get the data from server, the data will be maintained in the browser cache. That response now. When we are using the same URL again and again, every time what it is doing there, it is able to get the same, the total response from what there? From the cache. I get my point or not? Moreover, that cache, that responses are in general static responses, not dynamic responses. If it is a dynamic response, no, every time it must connect with what there? To the server only, there only dynamic response will be generated. If the response is static response, every time we want to get the static response, then definitely it will be cached. That request and response data is going to be cached. Every time we are able to get the response from the cache memory only. First time only it will connect with the server. Every time in the browser, from the browser cache only, that request will come there directly. Sir, all of you are getting it or not? Okay. Don't get confused with the next statement, but try to understand it clearly. What is that next point here? I'm telling to you. Observe carefully. Another point. What? Post request. Yes, sir. Get request. Wait 1 minute. Post request must not connect with the server, right? 1 minute. Get request is cached. If we submit the same request every time, then the response will come from the browser cache. It will not. Okay. It will not connect to the server. Okay. It will not connect to the server every time. Post requests are not cached. Every time post request must connect with the server. Okay, fine. Must connect with the server. Right, right. Now from understand the next point here. Listen carefully. Get request data will be stored in the browser's history. Every browser is maintaining some history or not? Okay, then get request data will be stored in what there? Browser's history. Here also we can understand security is not available. Get my point or not? If the data is stored in the browser history, if we complete your work with our system there, if I use your system, if I open that browser history, I can see whatever the data what we transferred there. Get my point or not? So it will be stored in the browser's history, but post request data will not be stored in the browser's history. Post request is what they're sending data now. So browser will not copy the data in its history. Observe carefully. Next one is another point here. Sir, all of you are following or not? I'm getting doubt on it now. Clear? Okay, fine. But when I'm trying to see your faces there, we are in discussion actually. Okay, fine. Let's move on to the point here. 1 or 2 points only, small points only. All right, sir. Understand the next point here. Get request is able to carry, is able to support, get request is able to support only characters data. Get request is able to support only characters data. I get my point or not? But whereas character data, whereas post request is able to support all the types of data. like characters data, binary data, and so on and so on and so on. All the types of data, characters data, binary data. One image I want to transfer. One image I want to transfer. Of course, an image is available in the database, or maybe I want to upload an image there. Now, post request is suitable, but whereas get request is not suitable for it. Why? Because it is able to support maximum for what they like characters data only. It's supporting for characters data. That means from client to server, only characters data only we are able to carry in the case of get request. One image is available. I want to upload that image onto the server. Get request is not suitable for it. Where we have to use what request? No, post request here we have to use. Got my point or not? But if you have any one word or two words or maybe some type of request parameters are available there, that we can carry through what there get request now. Little bit data and characters data, but all the types of data is not supported in the case of like what there post. Again, I'm telling there every time I'm talking about only request only, not response. Please remember this. All these points I'm talking for what purpose there? No, a request, not for response. Of course, response may be anything. I'm not talking about response here. See, one example I'm telling to you. Request, sorry, get request doesn't have body part. I'm saying there, but in the get request, response will have body part. Understand my point now? I'm telling you, get request does not have body part in the request format. But for the get request, response will be generated or not. In the response format, no body part is available. The getting data in the sense through what we are going to get the data through the response format body part only. Understand my point, you know? So all these points I'm telling to you with respect to what their request only. That's why every time I'm saying that get request, post request, get request, post request like this. I'm not including any response, you know. But observe this carefully. Right, sir. Get request is able to support only characters data. Post request is able to support all the types of data like what there characters data, binary data, and so on. Okay, fine. Then which one is the most powerful request type? No? Definitely, post request is the most powerful. Even not only in the comparison with the get request, throughout all the request types, post request is the most powerful request type. That should be the frequently used request type in our web applications. Understand my point, Kino? Say frequently we are going to take login pages now. Say not only in the case of login pages, in general, whenever we want to send some data from client to the server, in general, in every form, we are going to use what there post request. Get my point or not? Post request. That's the point here I'm telling you. That's okay, fine. Let's see this one. What are the various points here we understood there? Overall, the points here if you observe this, first one is what there. Get request is a default request in web applications, whereas post request is not a default request in web application. Especially if you have an hyperlink, if you click an hyperlink, which request will be submitted to the server? No. Understand it here. Hyperlinks are available. If you click on hyperlink, no, which request will be submitted to the server side? No, get request only. Why? Because there is no scope to specify request type. No. For example, I have a form, user form is available. There, if I click on a button, which request we are able to submit there? Maybe get, maybe post, maybe anything. In the case of hyperlinks, no chances of specifying request type. But in the case of user forms, there is a scope to specify user forms. So hyperlinks are always submitting get request to the server. Always hyperlinks in the sense for getting data or not, for getting form or something or not. But forms in the sense definitely posting the data. User form, if we take no, in that user form we are going to have some fields where we are going to enter the data. We have to click on button here. Automatically data will be submitted to the server. That means posting the data. Always in the user forms, what is suggestible? Come on, always in the user forms, what is suggestible? Post request is suggestible. For hyperlinks, what is there? Get request. For hyperlinks, what is there? Get request. By this we can understand where get request and where post request. No. Okay, fine. Next one is get request does not have a body part in the request format. Post request has body part in the request format. In the case of get request, if you submit request parameters, then the request format will carry the request parameters data through header part of the request format. Where the header part in request format has memory limitations, it is able to carry less data. Hence get request is able to carry less data from client to the server. In the case of post request, if we submit request parameters, then the request format is able to carry the request parameters through body part of the request format. Here, body part of the request format does not have limitations in memory. So it is able to carry more data. Hence, post request is able to carry more data from client to server. In the case of get request, if we provide request parameters data, then the request parameters data will be added to the URL in the address bar. Here user provided data is visible in the client address bar. So get request will not provide security for the data. In the case of post request, if we provide request parameters data, then the request parameters data will not be added to the URL in the client's address bar. Here the request parameters data will not visible in the client's address bar. So post request is able to provide security for the data. Example I have given there. In the case of get request, if we submit request parameters data, then the request parameters data will be transferred through the network as a plain text data. It will be understandable to every user in the network. So get request is able to provide security, is unable to provide security for the data. In the case of post request, if we submit request parameters data, then the request parameters data will be transferred through the network as the encrypted data. It is not understandable to all the users in the network. So post request is able to provide security for the data. In web applications, get request will be used to get data from the server machine, that is for download operation. In web application, post request will be used to post the data to the server machine, that is for upload operation. Get request is cached, where if you submit the same request every time, then the response will come from the browser cache. It will not connect to the server every time. Post requests are not cached, where every time post request must connect with the server. Get request data will be stored in the browser's history. Post request data will not be stored in the browser's history. Get request is able to support only characters data, but whereas post requests are able to support all the types of data like what their characters data, binary data, and so on. That's it. Overall, these are the points here we can understand clearly. Right, sir. Max information I've given, but if I identify any other points, no, later I will add these points. No, this is most generic topic in outside, but at the same time important topic in outside. Right, sir. Then the next interview question. Another interview question is like what there. Observe carefully. What is the difference between get request and head request? What is the difference between get request and head request? Simple, sir. Just only 1 minute. Try to understand it clearly. Observe carefully. If we send get request for a particular resource, for a particular server side resource, then the server will send a requested resource metadata, that is a response header part, and will send a requested resource metadata, that is response header part, and the actual resource that is the dynamic response, that is like what is it? No, response header body part. Response header body part. All of you observe carefully. If I submit a request to the server will identify the requested resource, its metadata will be taken, or response will be taken, both will be provided in the response format. Header part and body part both will be transferred to the client. Understand my point or not? But observe carefully. If we submit a head request from client to server for a particular server side resource, if we submit a head request from client to server for a particular server side resource, then the server is able to send only resources headers data, resources metadata, that is only a response header spot. That's only what the response headers data, header spot. That means only metadata of the requested resource will come, actual resource will not come. That means in the case of head request, a response format is coming from server to the client or not. In the response format, we are having only headers data, no body data, no response, only metadata of the response we are able to get. That's the meaning of like what their head request. Are you getting it or not? This is the meaning of like what their head request. Right, sir. Overall 1.0 version requests, that means request types are completed. Overall 3 request types are completed: get, post, head. Yes, sir. Are you getting it or not? Next one is what their options request type now. Okay, so the data will discuss with them tomorrow, not on tomorrow, on Monday, day after tomorrow. Then tomorrow we have core Java class there, and 4 to 9 o'clock max I will take the Java 8 versions ending concepts there. Total how much time I'm going to take to complete the Java 8 version? Tomorrow will finish it max. Okay, today unfortunately I have taken gap there, but tomorrow at 4 o'clock to up to the completion of the Java 8 version features. 2 to 3 functional interfaces are available. Then after that, stream API and date to time API. These two things I'm going to cover on tomorrow. Right, sir. Try to attend for it anyway. Thank you. Thanks a lot. We'll meet on tomorrow. Uh,